Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bridging Impact podcast. I am recording currently in the bathroom of a hotel in San Miguel Islands in the Azores in Portugal. Like I said last week on the previous episode, I have been traveling the past 8 days, and I wanted to take the opportunity and the challenge to talk about how traveling has helped me become a better coach. So I wanted to share the 3 principles of wisdom that I have learned on this trip that I want to pass on over to you, that you can take into your life so you can make a bigger impact on the kids that you are coaching, no matter what sport it is. And number one point of precision, number one piece of wisdom is preparation, right? Before you go to a trip, you need to make sure that you do research on where you're going, right? You need to make sure that you are prepared with your passport, all the clothes you need, all the toiletries you need, anything that is a must. You have to be and come prepared, right? You need to make sure that you read, what city you're going into. Is there any political unrest? What's the driving like? What's the, tipping culture like? Well, how do I, flag down a taxi? How do I get from point A to point B? You got to be prepared, just like obviously as a coach, right? I need to prepare for my practices. I need to make sure that I'm prepared for my games and understand my opponents, right? I have to understand where I am going. So preparation is number one. Number 2 is language. And I'm going to specifically focus on the language when it has to be focusing on a team, right? So I'm here in Portugal, and in Portugal, most people here that are in the service industry speak at least enough English to get by, right? And so when we think about language, we think about the ability to communicate. And the ability to communicate is just being able to express an idea from A to B. And if you do not understand the language, right, it is hard to receive that information. And I think that's one of the challenges that coaches have, especially with younger athletes, especially that play at high levels. Is a lot of times we as coaches, we will use language that is confusing or our athletes do not understand. So making sure that we are on the same page with our teams, with the language that we use, is very, very integral to how we impact our athletes, right? Making sure that they understand what we are teaching. It's great to teach our kids high level concepts, but if they don't understand the high level concepts, then they're not going to have the full learning experience. The same thing if you are traveling, right, and you're not able to communicate, right? You can use Google Translate. Obviously, you can kind of use hand motions, but the communication is not as good. Therefore, that connection is not as strong. So I'm going to say language is the number 2 principle. And the number 3 I'm going to talk about is just taking time off. For me, I think I really want to focus on, I went to the island of Flores, which is in Azores. It is a tiny little island. It's 150 kilometers squared. I'm not entirely sure what that is in miles. However, we were able to cover the island in 2 days entirely. One of the big things that I loved about it, there's 3,000 people on the island before tourists, and so there's probably about 4,500 on the island with tourists, and it's just an incredible way. It's actually where my grandparents are from. On my dad's side, they immigrated from the Azores, and I think it's just a beautiful experience, right? It's very nice to be in somewhere where I feel like the word that I can really describe for it is peaceful, right? You got the ocean waves, they're crashing. We saw some beautiful waterfalls. It's very incredibly green and lush. And so for me, after having probably the busiest month of my year in June, it was very nice to get away. Of course, I think big picture, trying to get away. And so what we can take away from that is, as coaches, many of you are listening, coaching is not your full-time profession. And if it is, it still takes a lot of your time. But you are a teacher, you have some sort of job during the day, and then in the evenings and on the weekends is when you're coaching. So I feel like it's incredibly important. Coaches, we love what we do, and so that's one of the great things. And some people will be like, well, you get to do what you love, which is true, and I'm very grateful for that. And at the same time, we still have to make sure we take time for our personal lives, for our significant others if you have them, for your friends, for your family, and just make sure you make time away from the game, because the game, whatever game you coach, right? Basketball, for me, basketball can suck you in, and you can have your whole life be basketball. And I love basketball, and I wouldn't trade coaching basketball and running a basketball business for anything. However, there needs to be some sort of, and balance is not the right word, but opportunities for breathers and breaks to enjoy life outside of just coaching basketball. So those are my 3 points of precision, my 3 principles of wisdom that I learned on this trip. Number 1, make sure you prepare to succeed, whether you are traveling or coaching. Number 2, make sure that you are on the same page with your teams and define the language you are using. And number 3 is make sure you are taking time for yourself to recover. If you got something from this podcast, you thought it was interesting, that I connected it to traveling and coaching, share it with a friend, connect with me. Let me know what point of precision makes the most sense to you and how you're going to use it in your development. Bridging Impact, we are focusing on developing coaches so that we can make the greatest possible impact on athletes. So appreciate your guys' time. I will be in your regular schedule. It will be another solo episode next Wednesday. Appreciate you all. Coach Furtado out.